Welcome everybody to another edition of the USO MVP series, that is military virtual programming. And we got a great one for you today. I know if you're zooming in with us, you are a huge fan of NASCAR Hall of Famer and legend, the Rainbow Warrior, Jeff Gordon. How you doing, my man?
I'm good, Chris. What a pleasure it is to join you and know that folks abroad and all over this country are watching from the military and armed forces. And man, I can't thank you enough for letting me be a part of this. And crazy times, crazy year, but hey, we got technology to work on our side, and thrilled to be a part of this show.
We're so glad that we do. And I want to remind everybody who's zooming in for our conversation with Jeff that you can ask Jeff a question. You can type it into your Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and I will relay that question to Jeff. Or if you would like to ask the question of Jeff live, please indicate that in your question. We also like to know, when you ask a question, who you are and where you are stationed. So make sure to include that in the Q&A section. Well, I'll start it off. Jeff, I was doing my research about you, and I knew there was a reason I liked you so much. You actually share a birthday with my mom, and that's coming up next week, August 4th. So happy early birthday to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm getting close to that 5-0 number, so I'm wanting to hold tight right here before I get there. Although life, has been good to me, and I've got a beautiful family and a wonderful wife, and I've got my health, so I have a lot to be thankful for and looking forward to it. But the celebrations these days are definitely more toned down. But thank you very much.
Well, I'll tell you what, I reached the 5-0 number this year, so don't be afraid of it. It's not that bad. But enjoy 49. You have it, and then you got the milestone coming up. So, Jeff, talk a little bit about your experience with the military. I know as we were chatting before we came on to Zoom that the military is always such a big presence at the NASCAR races, always such big supporters of NASCAR. What's your personal experience with the military?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, being a participant and a competitor in NASCAR, and it's, when I first started back in 1993, going way, way back, there was always, a military presence at some of our big events, Daytona 500, Memorial Day weekend for the 600 in Charlotte. But that just continued to grow to really every single weekend. There was a military presence at the racetrack where, those are our heroes, right? All of us as competitors, knowing what, what they put on the line for us to be able to do, what we're so passionate about in racing as a competitor. We know that wouldn't happen without men and women out there, risking their lives, the dedication, the commitment, as well as some of the things that maybe we share as a race team and what we try to do to compete at a high level, and what we learn from the military and how they communicate, their work ethic, just things, technology, all these different things that I think align. But most importantly, it's just seeing people in uniform that are there, seeing a race live and in person, and that come up to you and support you or say, hey, I'm a big fan of yours. We watch your races, when we're overseas and we get an opportunity to see a NASCAR race. We love NASCAR, so thank you for what you do. So, I think there's just a mutual respect that went back and forth. But for me, I was just always so appreciative, of the military support that I personally received over all the years and the interactions with those folks, at live events.
Jeff, 805 races over 25 years. You mentioned going back to 1993. You've had a long career that's really kind of straddled the modern era of NASCAR too. You raced against some of the legends, and now you, of course, are a legend yourself. Of all of those 805 races, does one or two races in particular stick out to you? Maybe they're not the big ones that we think might be obvious.
Well, it's funny now. I get a chance to reflect when you're in a race season, or you go through your career you're always just looking at the next one. Okay, if I won the last race, how do I win the next one? If I had a bad race, how do I turn that around? So you really don't reflect. So over 23 years of my career being in the Cup Series, I just didn't have that chance to do that. And now that I've had a chance to step away and look at the sport through a different lens, I remember the big events, certainly the Daytona 500 wins. Probably if one really stood out to me, it's the inaugural Brickyard 400 in 1994. I'm from California originally, but then I moved to Indiana. My family moved me to Indiana, particularly for racing. And, it's such a hotbed for racing, but it's more open wheel dirt track racing in Indiana where we moved to. And so I wanted to race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway so bad. But then NASCAR, was calling, and I fell in love with stock car racing and getting behind the wheel and getting the opportunity to go there. And I thought those dreams of racing at Indy had left, but they came in 1994 when NASCAR and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway had that inaugural event, and my dreams came true. Not only did I get to compete in that event, which was huge. I mean, there's just so many fans. There's several 100,000 fans that showed up for that event, but I also was able to go to Victory Lane that day. So I'll never forget that. Other than that, it's the wrecks that you remember, that you go back through and you go, wow, that was a spectacular wreck, and how fortunate I was, to be healthy and survive that wreck. And I think one of the ones that stand out the most to me was Pocono. Pocono, Pennsylvania is 2.5-mile racetrack, has the longest front straightaway in NASCAR of all the tracks. So that means you're carrying a lot of speed into the first turn, but it's also a turn one that you have to stand on the brakes for and get the car slowed down. And so, when you go through, a season or a career, you go, man, I just hope I never have a brake failure or tire failure in turn one at Pocono. Well, I got to live to tell about what that experience was like, and it was horrifying. But luckily for, safety features in the car, safer barrier, and maybe just the angle that I hit, it definitely was a big impact, but I was able to walk away from it.
Yeah, you mentioned Indianapolis, Jeff, and that was a dream of yours to drive there. And now here you are, after your career is over, you walk away being the record holder for most victories at Indianapolis, not only in NASCAR, but also tied with Michael Schumacher for most victories at one facility in a single series. So congratulations on that. That's certainly a huge milestone in your career. Let's get to a couple questions right now. We'll just start off with the one right at the top. This comes from Jason McLahorn, and he would like to know, what can you tell us about your 1998 championship season? Do you think Mark Martin pushed you that year to have a record season?
Well, thank you, Jason. Great question. And I never mind talking about the 1998 season. Definitely the greatest season in my career, where, we set a modern day record of 13 wins, won the championship. And no doubt, Mark Martin and I, we just had this spectacular season. Mark and I, were fierce competitors over the years, but we were teammates later in his career and mine, but we're also great friends, and just the utmost respect for this guy. And we can kind of laugh and chuckle about it now, that, his season would have been championship caliber, any other year, but we pushed one another, and I think he won 10 races that year, and I won 13. But that was one of those seasons where it just seemed like all the stars aligned when we were performing at our best, and we had a car in pit stops and just everything going right. We won the races. The days that we were hovering around the top 3 or 4 or 5, had a decent car, fought hard, kept ourselves in position, we won those races too, when the opportunity presented itself. So that's how you put together a season like that, and why it's so hard to really put that together year after year, because so many things have to click. But the chemistry, Ray Evernham is my crew chief, Hendrick Motorsports, and the equipment that they provided me, and I just felt like, I had the confidence that every time we went to the racetrack we could win, and made for a spectacular season. And no doubt Mark Martin, he pushed me a lot throughout my career. I loved racing against him. I loved the way he competed. He was one of the most fair competitors that you'll ever race against, but also one of the fiercest, which doesn't come along very often. And so yeah, it was. And I learned a lot from him before I got into the Cup Series about tuning the cars and what it took to be a competitor at that level by racing against him and spending quality time with Mark Martin. When I was at Bill Davis and driving a Ford before I got into Cup and at Hendrick Motorsports, spent some time with him. So, to go have a season like that with Mark is something that really stands out to me throughout my career.
It's such an interesting distinction in motorsports. The driver is really, he's the one who gets all of the accolades, of course, because he's taking the car across the finish line. But it's really such a team sport. That's really what people don't realize. The crew chief, the ownership, the pit crew, how quickly you can accomplish your pits, that all is a part of winning. I mean, those precious tenths of seconds really add up to a victory. So thank you for acknowledging your great team and crew chief. Jeff, we want to go to a live question right now. So I would like to welcome in Ryan Hyatt, who is retired from the Marines. Ryan, if you can start your video, I know you probably have a quick question for Jeff. There you are. Hey, Ryan. How you doing?
Hey, doing pretty good. You, sir?
Very well. What's your question?
I like that 24 hat you got on there, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. I've been trying to get you to sign the last ride hat at Bristol the past couple times that y'all have come through, but unfortunately you've had to get to victory lane or something, but it is what it is.
I keep trying, man. Keep trying. You just got to find me at the right place.
Oh, yeah. Basically, I had a question. Obviously, I tried meeting you at Bristol a couple times. I'm from Bristol, actually. I kind of wanted to know, since I race myself and I actually have a brake issue story, not as horrific as the Pocono incident, but involved me in running into a truck on pit road. It kind of ended pretty funny. But, so anyways, how did you prepare for Bristol on the old groove, like the lower groove, compared to preparing for either the middle or the high groove after they did the repave? I kind of was just kind of wondering how it, felt different in the higher or lower compared to the old or new.
Yeah, if it's a lot different. Obviously cars have evolved, tires have evolved. When they redid the concrete, the banking even changed a slight bit. But in the most part, it's still the same old Bristol. It's just now you have multiple grooves, right? And then they ground the top groove, and they thought that was going to take away the top groove, but it actually allowed rubber to build up and create more grip and actually a faster groove at the top now at the bottom. And then they've been playing around with some of this traction compound that they're laying. But when you go to the bottom groove at Bristol, the transition from the straightaway to the banking is more abrupt. And so the car gets very light in the back as you're trying to slow the car down, use the brakes. And yet when it lands in that banking, you've got a tighter radius around the bottom that you need that car to cut and turn and change directions quickly. And so you're having to set the car up to have a more loose condition to get through the center portion of the car. But yet as you transition into the banking, the back of the car just wants to come around. So you had to be real careful how you use the brakes and how you set the car, how you turn the wheel to the bottom, where the top is sort of the opposite. You want to carry a ton of speed, drive the car straight into that banking and not use much brake at all, and just let the car get into the banking and scrub the speed until it finds that spot, up into the apex, deep into the corner, and hooks up near the wall. And then you just jump in the gas and have to carry a lot of momentum on that top groove. It takes quite a commitment, and you're right up against the wall, where I think the bottom's more finesse. I think the top is more aggressive. So I think that's why you see some of the more aggressive drivers do well as the groove moves up to the top, and the drivers that know how to get right on the edge without stepping over it, because we've seen now, you damage the right side of that car, your day is over.
It's over.
Got a tire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was fun. The reason I had that question is I'd met AJ Allmendinger, and he'd only driven Old Bristol once. So I was kind of like, I wonder how the transition was. But the second question I had was, previously throughout my personal racing career, I'd actually reached out to your charity and we kind of partnered up. I was kind of wondering if I'd had a son this year. So that's kind of why I postponed all my racing stuff. I might have fallen out of contact with a couple of the guys, but I was just kind of wondering if that could kind of be a rekindled thing once I come back green flag racing.
Heck yeah, yeah, man. We listen. Our foundation does amazing work for pediatric cancer research, and so we love connecting racing. We just finished our Corvette raffle, right? So cool cars and racing and helping out kids. And finding ways to help doctors and staffs and researchers to find better ways and find cures and treatments for kids. I'm all about it, man. So yeah, let's reconnect on that.
Yeah, I'm definitely in on that. I'd lost my brother. He even though it wasn't pediatric cancer, he had cancer, I believe, 2 years ago. I lost him, and that was about the same time as, I can't remember the kid's last name, but I want to say Hammond, Caleb Hammond. That story came out. It was around a similar time. So I'd seen Jesse Awuji share it on Facebook, and then I took it to Twitter, and I'd reached out to his father, and I was like, hey, is it okay if I take it to Twitter? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And so then after that kind of grew. So that was really cool. And after that, I was like, man, this isn't something that any kid should have to go through, especially seeing somebody that I always looked up to go through it as an adult. I was like, there should never be a kid go through this.
And that's my mission. My goal is to find a day where no child has to go through that. And I'm sorry for your loss with your brother, but we're out there fighting the fight every day that we possibly can to find cures.
Ryan, we really appreciate your question, man, and thank you for your service. We appreciate you protecting.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
Good luck to you. Hopefully you catch up to Jeff at Bristol one time. You get him to sign that for you.
Oh,
Thank you, man. Hey, Jeff, you mentioned your charitable work, and that's kind of how we've gotten to know each other through Barrett Jackson and you putting cars across the auction block, always going to charity. How did you first get into that? And you just mentioned the Corvette that went across the auction block. What are your immediate future plans for more charitable contributions?
Yeah, Barrett Jackson is something that Rick Hendrick, who I drove 4 partners with now, introduced me to. He had invited me to come to Barrett Jackson for years, and I didn't know a whole lot about car auctions, and now I love it. It's one of my favorite events to go to. So to be able to go there, as well as tie in my foundation and the work that we do, and see the response that we've gotten over the years by bringing cars across the block and people wanting to not just have a cool car that I own, but to take it to a whole nother level because they realize that it's supporting a great cause. This all started for me way back with Ray Evernham, my first crew chief in the Cup Series, and his son was diagnosed with leukemia. And when it touches home and is that close, you realize what a family goes through, what a child goes through. And so through some of his efforts, we teamed up together, and then later I started my own foundation, and probably just along the way through Make-A-Wish and having kids come to the racetrack, so many of them were either going through cancer, recovering from cancer, or just been through treatment, and just seeing what the family had gone through, what those kids had gone through, it made me want to do more, and so that's when I started my own foundation. We started becoming very focused on the research side of things. I understand how important research and development is to being successful on the racetrack, and I realize that that's also how you're going to be successful in fighting cancer.
Yeah, very noble of you, Jeff. And Ray Evernham, of course, one of my broadcast partners for a couple seasons on Barrett Jackson. It was always a pleasure to see you and Rick right in the front row, and you knew if Rick was in his seat that there was something special coming across the auction block. Let's get to another live question from one of our service members. This one, I believe, is Philip Mercer, and he is in the Army, and he is stationed in Birmingham, Alabama. Philip, if you could start your video. There you are. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
Howdy.
Man, I like that setup you got there. Of course, I love that hat. That's going old school.
Thank you very much.
You don't look old enough to be able to have gotten that hat originally.
I was able to buy this at Daytona International Speedway. They have they had it in the gift shop a few years back, and I was able to pick it up.
Yeah, well, that's what these days now I do all the retro stuff. It's all about getting back to the cool things that we did over the years. So that's a good one right there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Philip, you look like you're set up to be a professional broadcaster there. You got your headset on, you got the microphone. Are you doing a podcast on us?
No, not at the moment, but maybe in the future.
All right. What is your question for Jeff?
All right. Well, knowing what you know now about media broadcast and the broadcast aspect of the sport, would you have done anything different while you were inside or outside of the car when you were a driver?
Love this question, Philip. It's a great one because absolutely 100%. Matter of fact, when I'm talking to drivers now, especially young drivers, I want to connect them to the broadcast more, go to the production truck, get behind the scenes to understand what goes into creating a broadcast and putting that on TV and what the viewers see at home. All my life I spent working with a team to create a great race team and race cars and play my part on the team. And broadcasting is the same way. It's a huge team. There's a tremendous amount of effort that goes on behind the scenes. And I think you take that for granted if you're a competitor and you just have somebody putting a microphone in your face and a camera and asking you a question. You don't really get it. You don't understand that 20 or 30 seconds that you have in front of that camera, how it may impact somebody's life or how it might draw somebody to the sport. And now I see it. Personalities are a huge part of a sport, and it's not just about what you do on the racetrack. It's the things that you do off the racetrack that creates a fan base. And when you create that fan base, those people are connected to you personally. Like it means something to them. And so they want to follow a person that maybe has some similarities or a quality or fun loving or whatever energy they bring. That's what draws new fans in the sport. That's what keeps fans around for a long time. And there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into that. And I wish I had done more interaction behind the scenes with the broadcast over the years. So now all I can do is pass that along to other competitors as they come up.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
That was a great question, man. We appreciate you asking that. We appreciate you coming on to the Zoom with us. You stay safe, man, and good luck with your podcast this afternoon.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.
Jeff, I got one person who zoomed in wants some clarification. This is from Sylvia Ruiz. She's from San Diego, California. You mentioned earlier in our conversation that you had started in 1993. She says, I think you started in 1992. She says she was working for DuPont back then, and she's been a diehard fan of yours ever since. She wants to congratulate you on your amazing career, and she also has her 24 hat on. So can you clarify that between 92 and 93?
Yeah, I mean, technically, the very first race that I ever ran in NASCAR in the Cup Series was the last race in 1992, and it is a memorable race because that was Richard Petty's final race, and it was my first race. There was a heck of a championship battle going on that day too between 3 or 4 cars. I can't remember how many, but Alan Kulwicki won the championship that day. Unfortunately for me and for Richard Petty, we both went up in a ball of flames. him literally, I backed into the wall at some point in the race. But so it wasn't one that is a real standout to me as a competitor. But it was my first race. So I did one race in 1992 before starting my rookie year and a full season in '93.
Richard Petty, obviously the king of NASCAR. Do you think his record for most wins will ever be broken?
Never. One is it's incredibly competitive today. It continues to get very competitive. The schedule just doesn't really allow it. I mean, if you go back before the modern era and the number of races that were those competitors were competing in, Richard, I don't know what his streak was, but he won like 14 races in a row or something at one time. They were doing 60, 70 races in a season. So, it'll never be broken. And his win percentage was unbelievable. Everything Richard Petty did. And to me, the king, that those marks that he set should never be broken. Look at what he did for NASCAR and how he helped to grow the sport. Along the way, there's certain individuals that transcended, and he is the guy and still a huge part of the sport. And so not only will it not be broken, I never want to see it broken.
Yeah, I mean, absolute legend. I've had the opportunity to visit the original shop in Level Cross. I mean, it is absolutely NASCAR mecca to go there. If you've never been to level cross, for those of you zooming in, if you get a chance to go there, if you're around the area, definitely go, because it's a truly special experience. And I agree with you, Jeff. I hope those records will never be broken, nor do I think they will either. All right, let's go to another live question right now. And this looks like it's from one of your younger fans, Jeff. This is from 11-year-old Jackson, and he is stationed up in Alaska at the Air Force Base up there.
Hey
Guys,
Jackson.
how you doing? What's happening, Jackson?
What's up, guys?
Thanks for joining us, buddy. Everyone's wearing their hat today. I don't know why I should have one on too. What's your question?
I decided to take. I was wearing a hat not long ago. I decided to take it off. I thought I wanted to, kind of keep myself cleaned up for this interview. But I should have kept the hat on. I'm loving all these hats.
Jackson, what's your question for Jeff?
So, there's one of them. What did you feel after Martinsville in the fall back in 2015?
Well, so you referred to my final win, in the Cup Series that catapulted us into that Final Four race at Homestead to go battle for the championship. We ended up coming up a little bit short, finishing third in the points that year. But to finish out my season as strong as we did meant the world to me. I probably had to work harder at my job in the last 5 years of my career than I ever did. Of course, when Jimmy Johnson came along, it forced me to have to work a lot harder too, because he was winning so many races as my teammate. But those last 4 or 5 years, I had back issues, so I had to really work physically harder to stay in shape and not have those back issues affect me. But then also, how the sport was evolving in the technology that we had at our disposal to make sure that you were doing everything at your absolute best. So spending more time with the team, analyzing data, just putting as much effort as I possibly could into it. So to get the payoff in 2015 by winning a race that I just love, that was one of my favorite tracks throughout my career, and for that to be my final race win in Cup seemed to me to be very fitting. And then to finish out my career, even though I ran some more races filling in for Dale Jr. the next year, really I look at 2015 as my final season, and to go compete for a championship. That day was spectacular. There was a lot of wild things that happened in the race, but I think what stood out the most to me was that besides just winning the race, and that accomplishment is my family was there, so my kids and my wife were able to enjoy that. And then the fans, Martinsville, you're closer to the fans than any other track. So, I parked the car on the start-finish line, and the fans were all up at the fence, screaming and yelling, and that is a memory that I will never forget.
Jackson, thanks for your great question. You guys stay safe up there, all right? We appreciate you guys keeping us safe. Take it easy, guys.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, thank you so much.
Jeff, it's always amazing to me how knowledgeable NASCAR fans are. I mean, 11-year-old Jackson right there is case in point. He refers to a race at Martinsville in 2015. You know exactly what he's talking about, and he just had that sly smile going on. The inside information that NASCAR fans has is great. Here's another question in the Q&A section. This is from Jonathan Goke. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He says that you are the only driver to win in the number 24 in the Cup Series. A lot of your fans think that number should be retired. What's your take on retiring car numbers?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, for the question. This is definitely something that Rick Hendrick and I have talked about over the years, and it's going to be something that comes up again, when Jimmy Johnson wraps up his final season at the end of this year. So, NASCAR really doesn't retire numbers. You can maybe talk NASCAR into taking it out of circulation for a period of time. But it's not like other sports where that number can get retired for good. Now, if that were the case, then I think that might be something that Hendrick Motorsports would consider. But I love seeing the 24 out there in the track. I was honored that Chase Elliott, when he came into the series, that he went to the team that I was with Alan Gustafson as the crew chief in that 24 car. It was a little weird to see it out there with somebody else driving, but I was honored. And I same way today, William Byron, great young racer, doing a great job behind the 24 car. So I don't know. Now I'm used to seeing it out there and sort of expect that 24 to be out there, and don't see that changing anytime soon.
And that's really another interesting distinction between NASCAR and other sports. It's really about the car. And I love hearing you guys and Mike Joy, of course, my buddy, calling the races, and they're saying the 24 car, as opposed to the guy who's driving. It's really about getting the car across the finish line, not necessarily the guy who's behind the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, that number, that is, so when we talk about sponsorship, they actually did something recently in the All-Star race, moving the number around and trying to get some more, marketing for sponsors and advertising and add a little more value there for them. And they moved the number around. And so, it's been interesting to see how the fans have reacted to that. But, from my standpoint and, my partnership with Rick Hendrick at Hendrick Motorsports, that number and how it's displayed and where it's located means a lot to us, because that is our brand. We need sponsors to make that car go around, and we do everything we can to make that car look cool, to give them their brand recognition. But when you start getting into where that number is located and the font and how it's tilted and all those things, that is something that is the race team and the fans connect to that race team, to that number, and it's very important to us. So we put a lot of effort into how we interact with that number and what it means to the history of the sport and to the history of a race team like Hendrick Motorsports.
And Jeff, I think one of your most amazing accomplishments, besides all the wins and the accolades and the Cup Series victories, which you've had 4 of, is your Ironman status in NASCAR. 797 consecutive races started. That's amazing. Was there ever a time in the streak where you thought maybe I won't finish or you won't start the race? And was that Ironman record a consideration for you getting in the car anyway?
Yeah, when I got into NASCAR, I never considered myself. I was always a competitor that I was passionate. I loved it. And I was hired to do a job, and I wanted them to be able to count on me to be there. So I wasn't the guy that was in the best shape, but you know what? I kept myself healthy, and I had a lot of drive. I had a lot of passion, and so to me, there was no other option. I was going to be behind the wheel of that race car. When I go back, other than a couple crashes that I had where I had probably a severe headache, and maybe it was a mild concussion, it was never diagnosed or anything like that, that maybe I should have stepped out of the car. I hit the wall at Dover one time qualifying really, really hard, just clipped the end of the safer barrier, and so I didn't get the full effects of that safer barrier to absorb the impact, and I had a bad headache. Back then they didn't have the protocols and the things that they have in place now, so I probably should not have raced that weekend. And so that's one of the closer times that I can think of that I came to it. I also, there was a crash. I blew a tire at Texas back in, I think it was 99, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure the year. But I hit the wall hard and cracked or bruised some ribs, and luckily had a weekend off after that race, because I had just enough time for it to heal somewhat. And then Bristol was the next race, so I didn't know if I was going to be able to get through Bristol. And I worked with some physical therapists about things that I could do, some padding and the way I situated the seat and different things that I did. And it was weird, because in the car when I was loaded into the bank and that pressure was on my ribs, I was fine. It was on the straightaway or when the caution came out and I had to take deep breaths, because you breathe heavy at Bristol, that it was hurting, it was painful. So luckily I was able to get through that race. So the only race that I ever remember missing throughout my entire career, now I'm talking about quarter midgets, go-karts, sprint cars, midgets. I got poison ivy one time. I was living in Indiana. We were doing some yard work, and I got poison ivy extremely bad. and my arm swelled up so bad that I couldn't bend my elbow and I couldn't drive the car. And so I missed a race or two on one weekend, and that's it. That's the only time I've ever missed a race that I can ever think about. And then going back to the Ironman, I get asked this question all the time. 797. How come you didn't go to 800? And it's just the way that the season wrapped up. I would have loved to have gotten over 800, and technically I did, because when I went and filled in for Dale Jr., so if you look back at the stats and say of all the races I had the opportunity to compete in, it's 805. But if you look at consecutive races that NASCAR ran throughout that period of time, I missed that 800 mark, but still 797. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, and it's one of those that it'll take a Herculean effort to break that one too. That's quite an achievement. That's so hilarious that poison ivy was the thing that kept you out of the driver's seat. That's amazing, Jeff. We're going to go to another live question right now, and this comes from someone who's got a fantastic last name. I'm a Mopar guy, so Jessica Dodge, who is stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Please click your start video button. Hey, there it is. Hey, Jessica, you don't look like a Jessica.
You don't look like Jessica, but you're a big fan. I see that.
Yeah, I'm on my wife's phone. My name's actually Trent Dodge.
Okay, hey Trent.
Thanks for joining us.
Mackenzie,
hi, how you doing?
Hi, Mackenzie.
Hi, Mackenzie. Hey, great shirt, great banner. What's your question for Jeff?
First of all, thanks for this opportunity. I really appreciate you doing this for us. It's really awesome. But my question is, when do you think Leo is gonna be able to start whooping Dad in some go-karts?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's my pleasure to be on here. I'm having a blast, and thank you for your service and for being a fan. You know what? We've introduced Leo, my son, to racing a few different times, and we've tried go-karts and motorcycles and different things, and he has fun with it, but I've not seen where he really is interested in taking it to the next step, where he wants to do more racing or compete. So I've kind of taken a step back of, I'm waiting for him to come to me and say, all right, Dad, I'm ready. Obviously, the opportunity is going to be there if he wants to do that. He raced quarter midgets and did well, and I enjoyed that. I'll be honest, probably the most fear that I've had since I've retired is absolutely watching him race. That scared the heck out of me. So I don't know how my parents got me into racing at a young age and watched me do all the different type of racing, especially sprint cars and midgets, these high horsepower cars at a young age. But we would definitely support it and love to see it. But right now he's just more into some other things.
Right. That's awesome. Well, do you kind of hope that he does kind of follow in Dad's footsteps, or maybe end up in Indy or NASCAR or something?
It's hard to say. When you've experienced it and you've had the success that I've had, you also don't want your son or daughter to be held up to that standard or have the pressures on them of that. There's opportunity that comes along with that. So there's definitely positives and negatives. Safety has come a long way. So I'm probably don't have as much to worry about there. But I want my kids to be similar to me. They find the thing that they were passionate about and pursue it. I just happened to be introduced to racing from my parents at a young age, and I loved it right away. And if that's racing for my kids, then I'm going to support it. If it's not, if it's something else, they take after their mom a bit. They're very artistic also and creative. So if that's where they go, then I'm going to support that. But I just want to see them have the desire and the passion for something that and I haven't seen exactly what that is yet. I've seen hints of it here and there, but as soon as I see them have that, then I'm going to back them 100%, whatever that is.
Of course, for sure.
Trent, thanks a lot for your question, man. Say hi to Jessica for us, and we appreciate your service, my brother. Stay safe out there.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Jeff, let's go to another question in our chat feature, and I think this one is really great. This might help out a bunch of different people. This is from Nicole Lauer. She is a military spouse and has a master's in communications and marketing with a background in motorsports. She'd like to know, what do you feel is the best way to try to get into the NASCAR community job-wise?
Yeah, I mean, we take folks all the time from different parts of the globe and their background, and obviously, it sounds like, was it Nicole? I believe it was Nicole.
Yes.
Yeah, Nicole. It sounds like you've got the credentials. So now it's just about getting that resume on the right person's desk, like getting any other job, and we take those resumes constantly, whether it be for a pit crew member, whether it be for an engineering position or marketing and PR. And that's a big part of NASCAR. It about taking care of those sponsors, making sure that we're connecting them between the team, the driver, the fans, the customers, and especially these days, right, with social media and all the different platforms of how you do that. You got to be creative, and you've got to be fresh-minded of what's new and what's happening out there. So fresh minds and new perspectives are always welcome. So I'm sure you can probably go on the Hendrick Motorsports site or other race teams, and there's probably a way that can show you how to send in those resumes and try to get their attention.
I'm sure she appreciates that advice, Jeff. We got time for one last live question, so we're going to welcome in Petty Officer Cassidy Mcfarland, who is in the Navy and is stationed in Bloomington, Illinois. Cassidy, if you click your start video button for us. Hey, there he is. How you doing, Cassidy?
Good uniform. I love it.
Doing good, sir. How you doing?
Very cool.
Great,
You're in Bloomington, Illinois?
Yes, sir.
All right, that's my home state. I'm a Chicagoan. What is your question for Jeff Gordon?
Well, I had a couple, but I guess the main one was there ever a race that you felt you and your team dominated so well and then had it slip away at the end that you could have back?
This is where I need a guy that works for me named John Edwards, who's always my memory bank, because I've been in a lot of races. But I do know that there was a race at Dover. I don't remember the year, but in Dover, Delaware, that we dominated that race. I think out of the 400 laps of that event, we led like 390 of them or something and lost. Probably came down to fuel mileage or something at the very end. So that's certainly one that got away. Just thinking out loud right now, not necessarily being prepared for this question, but there's definitely a couple that got away. We had a chance at winning a 6th Brickyard. Paul Menard won the race that day, and on strategy, we had a fast race car, and we ran them down in the closing laps. We dominated the race that day, ran them down the closing laps, and just couldn't make the pass in those closing laps in order to win another Brickyard. So that was disappointing. Couple Pocono races got away from me. We had one versus my teammate Terry Labonte back in the day where I missed a shift. Then there was another one at Pocono again versus a teammate, Casey Kane, where I had a great restart and just didn't want to overshoot turn 1 and checked up early thinking that the conservative route was the best way to get off the corner first. And man, he blasted it up to the outside and got to my outside and I ended up losing the race. Of course, later we kind of flip-flopped that at the Brickyard when I did get the 5th Brickyard win. So there's plenty of them. Trust me, you lose a lot more races than you win, and you remember those.
Cassidy, we appreciate your question. We appreciate you zooming in. And, of course, we appreciate your service.
Appreciate your service, man. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, we just have a couple minutes left before we wrap up. So I want to give you the opportunity to address not only the people who are zooming in with us, but our military servicemen and women overall. If there's something you'd like to say to them, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, just thank you. Your dedication, your service, your commitment to our country and what you do by putting your life on the line for us, and you know, allowing people like me to have the freedoms to live in a country that I feel safe, to live in a country that you know, have opportunity. I'm sure I speak on behalf of a lot of people, if not all of them, within NASCAR, the NASCAR community and racing, to just say thank you very much. I want to see each and every one of you at a racetrack again very soon, because I love having the military presence and the support that we have at NASCAR races. But more importantly, it's so we can show you in person our support. We love you and appreciate you very, very much. And this has been a blast, Chris. You know, you've done a great job. I love interacting with you, and you know, whether it be here or at Barrett-Jackson, but you've done a great job. And I just, you know, I'm thankful of all the people that tuned into this and asked some great questions. I had a blast talking, you know, and answering some of those questions.
Well, I thank you for that, Jeff, and we appreciate you coming on here to provide the troops with some entertainment. We're all looking forward to NASCAR getting back live, because having those fans in the stands and in the paddocks and on pit road makes such a difference. So looking forward to that. We love your broadcasting skills on Fox. So best of luck with continuing that. Jeff Gordon, NASCAR Hall of Famer, thank you for joining us here on the USO MVP Series, and thank you for all zooming in. And check with your local USO Center for future MVP event information. And most importantly, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Chris. Good job.